Hi guys, friendly neighborhood math teacher here. Obviously I'm not here with you in school today, sorry. So made a video so it's almost like I'm here. So do be good to your sub, Miss Richards. I know she's gonna do a great job and I know that she'll help you. But just in case, so she doesn't have to worry about teaching math, because you know, who knows, and in case Miss Richards isn't here, who knows who you get for sub, right? Thought I'd make a video so that way you can go through it and watch it, and like I said, it's almost like I'm here. So if you would, as this first slide says, how was your factoring puzzle? Hopefully it went pretty okay. If you would you double check and make sure your name's on it? Staple if you solved things on a different piece of paper, because I asked you to show some work. Would you go staple those and get them all passed in, and I know that Miss Richards will get them to me. So thank you. So pause the video while you guys do that and get all these worksheets in. Okay, so let's go see if we remember how to factor. We've been factoring these trinomials, things that have x squared in the front, and sometimes things that have a number with the x squared, a number besides 1, like this one that has a 6x squared. So grab your notes. Here's your warm-up problems for this morning, these two. Please factor and then go that extra step to go solve. Remember to go solve for x and figure out what x could actually be. So pause, see if you can figure these out, and then you can check my work. You've paused, right? Not just watching me work. Okay. Okay, now that you have your answers, it's time to go check my answers. Let's go check my work and make sure I remember how to factor too. So I notice that I have this last number of 42. So I'm going to think of things that multiply together and make the number 42. I don't know what makes 42. Let's go through the list. 1 times 42, of course. It's even, so 2 will go in. 2 times 21. 3 will go in, ooh, how many times? 34 times? No, 14 times. 14, that's what I meant. Yeah, 4 won't go, will it? 5 won't go. 6 will. 6 times 7, and then if I go the next number 7, I'm back on the other side, so I think I've got all my factors. Which ones of those add and subtract to be 13? 6 and 7. Now I just need to figure out if I need 2 positive signs, 2 negatives, or 1 of each. What does the last number tell you? You have a positive 42, so you either need 2 numbers that are positive to multiply together to make positive 42, or 2 negatives. Well, if it's 2 positives or 2 negatives, that breaks the tie. It's going to be 2 negatives. Now we just solve. So we set each parentheses equal to 0 and solve. If x minus 0 equals 6, x got to be 6. And if x minus 7 will equal 0, x must be 7. So I hope you have the answers x equals 6 and x equals 7. Now let's do the second one. Little bit tougher because of that 6 in the front. It is okay to make the parentheses and kind of guess and check. It is a method and it's fine. Think of things that multiply to make a 6x squared. Could be a 6x and a 1x, could be a 2x and a 3x, and then I need things that multiply and make 4. Could be 1 and 4, could be 2 and 2. It's a lot of combinations of those first numbers and last numbers. If there aren't too many combinations, I'll try it, but I think I'm going to go try our box method. That's what I like. But if you want to guess and check, it's okay. Okay, 6x squared in the front, 4 in the end. 6x squared and 4. Multiplying those numbers together, 6 times 4 makes 24. I need to find factors of 24. It has quite a few, doesn't it? 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6, 5 won't go. So if I go back to 6, I'm on the other side of my factors. I've got all my factors. Things that will make 5, gotta be a 3 and an 8. So I write 3x and 8x. Okay, now we're looking for common factors. Should have given myself more room there. Okay, what can go into a 6x squared and a 3x? Look at numbers and variables. Oops. Largest thing that goes into both? 3x. Largest thing that goes into 8x and 4, the biggest thing that will divide evenly? 4. No x, the 4 doesn't have an x. Now I'm going to go the other way. 6x squared and 8x, biggest number, biggest variable? 2x. What goes into 3x and 4? No number will go into 3 and 4 besides 1, and 1 has an x and 1 doesn't, so the only thing that goes in is just 1. Now we have our parentheses all figured out. 2x with a 1 and a 3x with a 4. Is it okay if your parentheses are switched around from mine? Yes, but they have to say the same thing. You need the 3x and the 4 together. You need the 2x and the 1 together. Now we just need our symbols, and then we can finally solve this. Well, I'm multiplying and making a negative 4. 2 positives, 2 negatives, 1 of each. 1 of each. So we're going to have to be extra careful about which thing I make positive and which thing I make negative. Let's see, if I try the outsides, I have 4 times 2x, that's an 8x. This is making an 8x. This makes a 3x. How do you put an 8x and a 3x together and get a negative 5x? It's not a positive 3, is it? Positive 3 with a negative 8 or a positive 8 with a negative 3? Yeah, I think I need a positive 3 but a negative 8. Now I can go solve. If 2x plus 1 equals 0, subtract 1 off each side and divide by 2. So I have x equals negative 1/2. Now I'll try the same on the other parentheses. If 3x minus 4 equals 0, add 4 to both sides. Now be careful, which are you dividing by? Do you divide each side by 4 or do you divide each side by 3? Go divide by 3. So x equals 4/3. So I have x equals negative 1/2 and x equals 4/3. Hope you got yours right too. We're going to still factor today, but we're going to work it a slightly different way. Let's try another problem. Okay, let's take a second and see if we can figure out this problem. I hope you're writing this one in your notes. X squared minus 12x minus 10 equals 0. Not very big numbers. There's not a number in the front of x squared, just that understood 1, so I think I'll just try to factor it with my regular old parentheses. Okay, must be x times x to make x squared. Can you think of things that multiply and make 10? Whoops. 1 times 10 and 5 times 2. That's all I've got. Which of those will add and subtract somehow together and make a 12x, a negative 12x? I don't think if I put a 1 and a 10 together anyway, I'm going to get a 12. An 11, yes, but not a 12. And same thing with 5 and 2. I can't add or subtract a 5 and 2 and get a 12. So this one is not going to be factorable by our normal parenthesis method. And it's actually not going to be worked with our box method either. We're going to have to do something different. So, what's wrong? I know factors of 10, but they're not going to make a 12. Guess we need a new method. Now we'll go figure out maybe what it is. So, this problem says this x squared minus 12x minus 10. if I could just get rid of this number 10, if I could change it to another number, maybe I could get it to factor a lot easier. That's really what's going to happen. We're going to get rid of this 10 and we're going to find another number to put there that we can factor really nicely. We kind of cheat a little bit. It takes a minute to move away the 10 and put the new number in, but once you get the hang of this, I think you're actually going to like this method. Now the big question is, so what number do you put in there? Well, there's actually a bunch of different numbers that you could put in. We could find things that add and subtract to 12 but multiply to be a bunch of different numbers. But we're actually going to find one specific number. So we could find lots of different numbers, but let's try this. Got your pencils already? Here's the big title of what we're doing today. What we're going to talk about is called completing the square. So no joke, write it down. Circle it, star it, highlight it, whatever it is that you need to do, so that we can talk about completing the square. And it might even be worth it if you wrote in your notes, just off to the side, that this method is good to use if you're factoring and you really can't figure it out. If you know that you're supposed to have things that multiply to make 10, and none of those are adding up or subtracting to be 12, when you just can't figure out those numbers. So completing the square is a good option when you just can't do that parenthesis factoring. So, back to this problem. You've already got it written down. We already tried it the factoring way. Wasn't working. Let's go try completing the square. So, step one. Step one is, the whole idea is I'm trying to get a new number where the 10 is. And if I need to put a new number where the 10 is, I've got to move the 10 away. So if I move it off to the side, I create a space to find that new C number. Remember A, B, and C? A is 1, B is negative 12, and C is negative 10. I don't want this negative 10. I want to move it away. So let's move it to the other side of the equal sign. How do you move negative 10 away? We're going to add it. So add 10 to both sides. Oops. Add 10, add 10. X squared minus 12x equals 10. Now, do you notice that I have left a space where my 10 used to be? You can leave a blank space, but don't start singing Taylor Swift, right? So I usually leave a blank space because eventually I'm going to put a new number in there. But I moved my 10 away, I left a space so that I can figure out what this new number is. Now we have to do a little bit of work off to the side. It's not bad, but you may want to do it off to the side. Okay, we are going to look at this number here that is our B number, negative 12, and we're going to do two things to it. They're not hard, but you have to remember what to do. I'm going to go off to the side, I'm going to write this negative 12. Negative 12. We are going to cut it in half and then square that number. So first thing is, cut it in half. What is half of negative 12? Negative 6. Now we're going to square that number. I'm going to square negative 6. Now be careful. I know if you put this in your calculator, a lot of you type in this, negative 6 squared, and your calculator will tell you negative 36. It's not negative 36. Your calculator uses order of operations. So it will square your 6, then make it negative. If you really can't do this one in your head, you need to type in parentheses. You are squaring the whole thing, negative 6. So what's a negative 6 times a negative 6? Positive 36. So I'm squaring it and getting positive 36. That is my brand new C number. Okay. So, one more time, I took that negative 12 and I did two things to it, right? I halved it and I squared it. So half was negative 6, squared is positive 36. That's my new C number, positive 36. Now you guys have done enough algebra to know that you can't just add 36 on one side of an equal sign and be good. If you add 36 on the left side of the equal sign, you've got to add 36 on the right side. So we'll do that too. Okay, let's see what we have now. X squared minus 12x plus 36, and 10 plus 36 is 46. And I know somebody's thinking, this doesn't look any easier. It is. Okay, let's think about this trinomial. The first one that we had with the negative 10, it didn't factor very well, but I promise you, this factors great. This is a wonderful one to factor. So let's go think about factoring it. Okay, it's got an x squared in the beginning, so it must be x times x. Think about things that will multiply to be 36, but they're going to add and subtract to be 12. Got it? 6 and 6. Okay, help me out with the signs. I'm supposed to multiply and get 36 positive, so I need 2 positives or 2 negatives. 2 negatives. Here's the biggest thing. Do you notice that when we made these parentheses, that you got 2 parentheses and they say exactly the same thing? X minus 6 and x minus 6. That's going to happen every time on this completing the square. Now they won't always be x minus 6, but I mean you're going to get 2 parentheses that are exactly the same. So you'll get like x plus 5 and x plus 5, or you'll get x minus 4, or 2x plus 1 and 2x plus 1. They'll be the same. And the whole reason we call it completing the square, we completed it, we put a number in, and now this thing is a perfect square. When you have 2 parentheses that are the same, you can write it as that thing squared. X minus 6 all squared equals 46. We took out the 10, we put in the 36, we completed it, and this thing is a perfect square. It's x minus 6 quantity squared. So now we're almost done. You are so past the hard part. Now we just have to solve for x. Okay, let's go solve for x. Look at the things that we need to move away from the x. I'll have to move away a 6, and I'll have to move away a square. What do you have to move away first? Are you allowed to move away the 6? It's underneath a square root sign, so I can't do that. I actually have to get rid of that square sign, so you help me. How do you get rid of a square? Square root. Okay, square root the left, square root the right. And if I have a square and a square root, they cancel each other out, and I just have x minus 6. On the other side, whenever you square root both sides of an equation, you always have plus minus. So I have positive or negative square root of 46. Sometimes we can simplify that number, sometimes we can't. So let's just think about things that multiply to make 46 and see if we can use that square root jail. Let's see, 46 is even, so I know I can divide by 2. 2 times 23. What multiplies and makes 23? Nothing, it's prime. So these are the factors. Does anything jump out of square root jail? No. So I'm just going to keep calling it square root of 46. I couldn't simplify it anymore. X minus 6 is positive or negative square root of 46. With such a big number, it looks like you ought to be able to simplify it, but we can't. One last step and we're all finished. You're just trying to get x by itself. So how do you get rid of minus 6? Add the 6. So I will add 6 to the left, so it's gone, x. And on the other side, I'm adding 6. Now the big question, I have a regular whole number 6, and I have a square root of 46. Can you add a 6 with a square root of 46 and call it square root of 52? No, one's a number, one's a square root number. Not exactly like terms. So then we just literally write it as it's a positive 6, and we will add or subtract square root of 46. I just moved that 6 over. Sometimes people put the 6 at the end. I'm going to tell you, I think it's going to be better later, you're just going to have to trust me, about putting that 6 at the front. So be careful also that you're not writing 6 times the square root of 46. These aren't being multiplied. This says it's positive or negative, so you're actually doing 6 plus a square root of 46 and a 6 minus a square root of 46. So make sure you have the plus minus in the middle. And there's our answer. It's kind of ugly, but it's done. This is why we couldn't factor it very well. We didn't have nice numbers like, x equals 6 and x equals 2, or even like x equals 4/3, because it didn't have parentheses that had pretty numbers in there. This kind of says, yeah, we did the right thing by completing the square. We couldn't have factored it with our parentheses. It wasn't going to work. Okay, so part of being able to complete the square is to find that new C value. That's kind of the hard part for students, is to get the C value. So I'm not asking you to work these out, these four, I'm not. Let's just decide what this new C number would be. So let's do a couple of these together, and then I'm going to have you guys pause the video and you guys can do the last two. Okay, you ready? Let's go get this first one. So it says x squared plus 18x minus 3 equals 0. All right, I'm not solving it out, but I am going to move that 3 to the other side. I can't factor this one very well. I'm going to get a new C, so I have to move the C that's already there out of the way. So x squared plus 18x, and if I move the 3 to the other side, I get positive 3. You have left a space for the new C. Okay, how do you get the new C again? You take the B number, which happens to be 18. And do you remember what we do to it? Two things. Half it and square it. So what's half of 18? 9. And what's 9 squared? 81. So we're going to add 81 to both sides. Add 81. And you know, right, if you add 81 on the left, you've got to add 81 on the right. Now I'm not going any further right now. I just want to make sure you can get the new C number. That's kind of a big deal. So let's try another one. Okay, x squared plus 2x minus 5 equals 0. Okay, same thing. I'm going to move that C number over because I don't want it. So x squared plus 2x. Add 5, add 5. We have left a space for our new C. Hard to put a new C there when there's already one there. So remember, take the 2, half it, and square it. What's half of 2? 1. Now the hardest one that my other classes miss all the time. What's 1 squared? 1 times 1. 1. Add 1 on the left, so we will have to add 1 on the right. Okay? I'm going to step out of the way, and I'd love for you guys to work on these last two. Let's see. X squared plus 1 equals 3x. Now let me give you a word of warning. Look at this one. Is this in the right form? Is it in good order? If it's not in good order, you may have to rearrange a little bit. Then go find your new C. Okay? Next one, 2x squared equals 8x minus 6. So again, if it's not in good order, rearrange and find that new C. Okay, so I'm stepping out. You pause the video, see if you can find the brand new C number, and we'll talk in a second. And you just paused the video and not waiting for me to do this, right? Okay, let's go see. I know, don't freak out on me. This one with the 3x was a little tough. I know, it's okay. Just trust me here. Okay, first thing is, let's rearrange. It's not in good order. So I have x squared, which is fine. Ooh, that's kind of not very dark. Let's try a different color. Okay, so I have x squared, maybe. I'm going to move the 3x over to the other side, which means I'm going to subtract it. So minus 3x. And I'll pull the 1 over to the other side, negative 1. So I have x squared minus 3x, negative 1 on the other side of the equal sign. Well, I know this one's tougher because it has an odd number. It's going to happen. Not a lot, but it will happen. Don't freak out on me. I promise it's not as hard as you think. So, first thing is to cut it in half. And I know when you cut 3 in half, you're thinking 1.5. Don't call it 1.5. Don't call it 1.5. Decimals on this are not going to be your friends. Believe it or not, fractions are going to be easier. So, think of it this way. You took this B number, which was negative 3, you cut it in half. Just write it as negative 3 over 2. It is negative 1.5, it is negative 1.5, but now when you square it, you know how to square that. Square each number. What is negative 3 squared? What's 2 squared? There's your fraction. Negative 3 squared is 9. 2 squared is 4. So you have 9/4. And I'm going to add 9/4 to the other side. It's okay, it's halving and squaring, even when it's a fraction. Okay? Maybe this one went a little bit better. Rearrange. So 2x squared minus 8x equals negative 6. Now, here's something that I did not tell you, just to see if you know, okay? I'm sure that some of you guys took this negative 8 and you halved it and squared it. Good, but not on this problem. Oh my gosh, what? You are only allowed to complete the square if this thing says x squared. It cannot have a number in front. So what do? Well, I gotta get rid of this 2. I'm going to divide it away. And if I divide it away, I have to divide 2 out of every single thing. Ready? So I'm going to divide by 2 and call it x squared. I'm going to divide by 2 and say minus 4x. And I'm going to divide by 2 over here also and say negative 3. If you divide by 2, divide everything by 2. Now we can go find our brand new c value. I have to do a 4 though. So half it and square it. Half is 2, squared is 4. So I'm adding 4 to each side. I know those last 2 were kind of tough. I was a little mean to you. Sorry. But these are going to come up not nearly as often as the first 2, but I just want you to kind of be aware it's what's going to happen. Rearranging is going to happen, I know. If you ever have one that has an a number that is not 1, you're going to have to do a little division, get it all equal with an x squared, and then go half and square. And sometimes you're going to have an odd number. Don't freak out. Write it like a fraction, and then square the fraction. Square the numerator, square the denominator. Okay. Believe it or not, you are already kind of past the major hard part, so let's keep on going. See if I can write a little bit darker for you. Okay, so it's got an x squared, so you don't have to freak out about that. Let's take that 2 and move it over to the other side. It's a positive 2, so what do you do to move it to the other side? We're going to subtract. X squared plus 8x equals negative 2. Okay, kind of back to the more normal ones, right? We're going to take our 8, and remember, do what to it? Half it and square it. So half is 4, squared is 16. Okay, if you just squared it and put 16 on the left, you must add 16 on the right. So let's go get that side out of the way. What is negative 2 plus 16? 14, of course. Okay, so I am left with a trinomial, x squared plus 8x plus 16. And while that original problem, x squared plus 8x minus 2, didn't factor very well, this one factors wonderfully. So think of things that multiply and make 16, but they add and subtract to make 8. Did you think of them? 4 and 4. Okay, 2 positives or 2 negatives? Okay, let's see. So if we go write it as a perfect square, because we're supposed to get 2 parentheses that are the same, x plus 4 all squared makes 14. Now just a little thought here. Remember when we moved that 2 out of the way, over here, and we were finding that new c number, how we took 8 and we halved it and we squared it? Well, you have an 8, right? A positive 8. What is half? Positive 4. That's what shows up right here. That's what goes in that parentheses. When you half it, that's what this number ends up being. So you can always kind of double check yourself. So now we're just needing to solve. So I've got the completing the square done. Now it's just a matter of solving. So to get x by itself, I'll have to get rid of the 4 and get rid of the square. You know what we do first, right? Let's take care of the square. So I square root the left and I square root the right. And anytime I square root both sides, I have to plus minus. So I have x plus 4 makes positive or negative square root of 14. So I wonder if I can do square root jail and simplify 14. 2 and 7. No pairs, so I'm leaving it. If I can simplify, I will, but this one I can't. One last step, all done. You have an x, and it has a plus 4 with it. So we want to get rid of it. We are going to minus 4. So I have to minus 4 on this side. Now remember, you can't have a positive or a 4 and then take away like a square root of 14. One's a square root and one's not. So I just leave it as negative 4, because I've minus 4, plus or minus the square root of 14. They aren't multiplied together, they are added and subtracted together. So this says negative 4 plus whatever the square root of 14 is, and negative 4 minus the square root of 14, whatever decimal that is. So you have two answers, and they're both ugly decimal answers. Good thing we found it without having to get the ugly decimals. Yay, done. Okay, so let's go see if we can work this one with a partner. I promise it's not a very bad one. What I would like for you to do is to take just a second and write it down, of course. X squared minus 4 equals 10x. Now, before you get working with your partner, take just a minute and look at that and realize you need to rearrange it. So rearrange it, then talk to your neighbor and see if they have the same thing, how they've rearranged it, and work together to go complete the square. So pause me and go work, okay? Okay, hopefully you have had some time to work with your partner. I hope you have figured this one out. Now let's go see if I can do it right. So you can yell at me through the camera and tell me if I'm doing this all wrong. Hey, I make mistakes, you know I do. Okay, so I've got to get this in good form, and this kind of depends. I definitely need to put the 10x on the other side. Now you can put it at the front, you can put it at the back, but you can put it anywhere you want to, so I'm just going to go put it in the order that I know I want it. I'm going to minus the 10x here. Okay, so I put the 10x on the other side. Now some people are going to say, this is where I start completing the square. And other people are going to move the 4 and then say, this is where I start completing the square. But if nothing else, you know, you've got to move this 10 to the other side. And eventually we are going to have to move the 4 away, or that negative 4, so that we have room for the brand new c value. So let's go move away the 4. Okay, why do I have a positive 4? Because I had to add 4 to both sides. I added 4 to the 0, positive 4. Okay, now we've got this blank space. We need to fill it in with a brand new c value. We take the b value of negative 10, half it, and square it. Negative 10 halved, half of negative 10 is negative 5. What's negative 5 times negative 5? Positive 25. And you remembered to put that on both sides, right? I know you did. Okay, so what do we have? I have 29 on the right, and I have x squared minus 10x plus 25 on the left. The original problem did not factor well, this one does. So I have x minus 5, all quantity squared equals 29. So remember that negative 10, how we took half, and that's negative 5? Shows up right here. Okay, now we just have to solve. So we square root both sides and move the 5. Square rooting both sides. I get x minus 5 and a positive or negative square root of 29. Again, you square root both sides, that's when you write positive or negative. Last thing to do, move the 5 over. So I add 5 and I add 5. So I add 5 over here, it's positive, plus or minus square root of 29. Now later on when we do these on our calculator and we'll get decimals, we'll actually type in 5 plus radical 29 and then 5 minus radical 29. We aren't multiplying them, they are actually added and subtracted. And we get two answers, so yay! And hopefully you did not vomit. Okay, let's go try this one on your own. Yay, I know you're so excited. Start that sentence over. I would like you to check with somebody when you are finished. But see if you can get through this whole thing all by yourself. So it says x squared minus 1 equals negative 6x. So pause me, work, and then you can check my answer. Okay, I just took a couple of steps and rearranged. I haven't completed the square yet, but I had to set it up so that I could. Okay, I need to take that 6x, half it, and square it. So half is positive 3, squared is positive 9. And if it's okay with you, I think I'm going to just see if I can do that factoring all in one step. If you need to do it in 2 steps, that's fine. Let's see, I know it's a perfect square. That's why it's called completing the square. We have set it up so it's a perfect square. Things that multiply make 9, but they add and subtract to be 6. I'm pretty sure it's the 3. So the question is it x plus 3, oops, squared, sorry, or is it x minus 3? It's an x plus 3. X plus 3 all squared. Now we'll go solve and square root both sides. I am leaving this as positive or negative square root of 10. I can't simplify it. If I could, I would. We haven't had one yet where we can, but if I can, I will. And now I just have to minus 3. I have negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 10. I hope you have the same thing. Okay, we have a little bit left, but not much. We're almost done. Okay. So we've kind of already looked at this about what happens if that middle term is negative, but we're actually going to go ahead and solve one and just show you how it works. I promise that this doesn't show up very often, but it does show up, and I want you to be able to see what happens if it does. It involves some fractions, but don't let it scare you too much. Okay, so just like normal, we're going to move that 3 over to the other side. And just like normal, we're going to take the 5, we're going to half it, and we're going to square it. It's just not as easy to take half of 5. Write it like a fraction. So if you take 5 and you cut it in half, 5 halves. It's 2.5, it's just written as a fraction. Now square it. 5 squared and 2 squared, 25 fourths. Just call it 25 fourths. And of course we had to put that on both sides. Okay, I'm going to go deal with this right-hand side first. It says 3 plus 25 fourths. You're adding fractions. And you can't add fractions until they have a common denominator. So I'm going to put them both in fourths. So 3 is how many fourths? 12. 12 fourths is 3. And we'll add it to 25 fourths. So add your numerators. 12 fourths plus 25 fourths makes 37 fourths. It's an ugly fraction, but that fraction is done. Okay, let's go look at factoring the other side. So, I know it's fractions, don't freak out. You know it's going to be an x and an x because x times x makes the x squared. I'm trying to get things that make 25 fourths, but add and subtract to be 5. Who knows that? But remember that trick? When you take 5 and you cut it in half, what was that half number? 5 halves. That's what goes right here, 5 halves. And I'm pretty sure it's 2 pluses. So it's x plus 5 halves all squared. I know not the easiest, but you really don't have to search for numbers. You just think about what's that b number and you cut it in half. Now we solve. It's going to have some fractions and it's okay. I promise the hard part's now done, but you have a little bit left. Let's go square root. Okay, square root on the right, square root on the left. That didn't look any different color, did it? I get x plus 5 halves, and on the other side, I have a square root of 37/4, positive or negative. You can actually square root a little bit of that. That means you're square rooting the 37 and you're square rooting the 4. You can square root the 4. So I'm going to call it positive or negative square root of 37 over 2. Do you notice the 2 is not in the square root? You just square rooted the 4 in the denominator. Square root of 4 is 2. It's not square root of 2, it's just 2. Almost done. Take that 5 halves to the other side. Negative 5 halves plus or minus square root of 37 over 2. Yeah, there's fractions, but it's done. So don't let them intimidate you too much. Okay, one more. The kind that has the number in the front that's not just x squared, but it's like a 2x squared or a 3x squared. And again, don't freak out about it. It happens sometimes, but not a lot. Okay, so problem says 3x squared minus 12x plus 5 equals 0. I need to complete the square. It's not going to work out very well with parentheses, so I'm going to move that 5 to the other side. And one more thing. It would be so much easier for me if it just said x squared, so I need to get rid of the 3. I'm going to divide by 3. That means you divide every single thing by 3. Divide it all through by 3. X squared minus 4x over here, negative 5/3. Divided by 3, divided by 3, divided by 3. I know, it's a fraction, just leave it. That's not bad though. Okay, so now we have to find the new c. Take the negative 4, half it, and square it. So half is negative 2, squared is 4. Added 4 to both sides. This factor's great. Look, there's not even fractions on this side. X minus 2 and x minus 2. So I have x minus 2 all squared. Hardest part, got to add these fractions together. So I have negative 5/3 plus 4. I've got to turn 4 into some kind of thirds. So I have negative 5/3 plus 12/3. Well, what is 12/3 take away 5/3? 7/3. Okay, look at your problem. Have we square rooted yet? Not yet, so I've got to square root both sides. Okay, I think I'm running out of room. I have x minus 2 is positive or negative square root of 7/3. Now we'll have to work on that a little bit. Remember, you're not allowed to leave that square root in the denominator. Square root in the numerator is fine, but not the denominator. This is a square root of 7 over a square root of 3. Okay, so coming up here. I have x minus 2 is positive or negative square root of 7 over square root of 3. Remember how to get rid of that denominator square root of 3? We times numerator and denominator by square root of 3. So I have x minus 2 is, what's a square root of 7 times a square root of 3? Inside numbers times inside numbers, square root of 21. Square root of 3 times square root of 3 is square root of 9, which is 3. So we have a slightly larger square root in the numerator, but we don't have a square root in the denominator. Last bit, move your 2. So I have positive 2 plus or minus that square root of 21 all over a regular 3. I know, not the best. You're going to get some fractions, but I know it's things that you can handle. Okay, so looking at your homework, you have a completing the square worksheet that I know Ms. Richards will give you. Notice we are not doing all of the worksheet. There's just some selected problems. don't scribble them out. We might go back and do some of those later, so maybe just circle the ones that you need to do. 1 through 4, those are just find the new C value. Don't solve it, just actually find the new C. And then there are, 6 of these that you're actually solving. So number 9 and 10, 14 and 16, 19 and 20. So just circle the ones that you need to do. And notice that we are going to have a quiz next class. What's on the quiz? You need to know how to factor with the parentheses. You need to know how to factor with the box method when that A number is not 1. You'll need to know this completing the square method. And going back and remembering things like the difference of perfect squares and using that greatest common factor. You can even go back and look at that first quiz that we had, I think. So get ready for your quiz. Go work really hard on your worksheet. Help each other out if you've got time. Otherwise, work really hard this weekend. If you need to, go back and watch the video again and listen to the explanations again. All right? So go work hard and be good, and I'll see you really soon.